All right. What a way to end the season. Um, just go to the intro. Hey guys, coming up for the second half of the season of season 2 of Jane the Virgin. Of course, I already reviewed the first half of the season. You guys want to check that out. And as you guys saw from my intro, I am in bitter shock over the finale. But of course, we have to talk about what happened before that, which there is a lot to talk about, really. I mean, there is a lot that happened in the past, I think like 10 or something episodes. I mean, there really is a lot to get into, but I really do like that. And I'm going to talk about everything that happened in those 10 episodes. There's a lot to recap, and there are probably going to be some things that I forgot just because there's so much that happened this season. So I am going to say right now, I don't necessarily understand the Sin Rostro plot. I really don't. I mean, they've done a lot with it. For me, it's my least favorite part of the show. I definitely will say that. I don't think it's bad by any means, but it's the one part of the show where I never fully understand what's going on. I can never fully really explain it, and I'm gonna try my best to explain everything else, though I pretty much do remember. But let's just get to this season. Of course, the main stuff we have to talk about is Jane, which I really do love what they do with Jane in the second half of the season, because the first half was her becoming a mother, and was two things. It was one, her becoming a mother and developing a mother-son relation with Mateo and seeing how great she was as a mother, and two, her picking between Rafeal and Michael, and both of those things are resolved in the second half of the season. Let's first talk about the ending of the first half of the season, because as you remember, it seemed like Michael dropped off this present to Jane, and that it seemed like he did it for her and everything, but we're thinking that we are going to get that resolution of why Michael dropped off that present and everything, and that he did it for Jane. We get this really nice scene in the beginning, but we realize that it's actually just a dream. Michael did drop off a present, but it was only to help her family. He never really wanted something between the two of them, and it's sad to see, because you can tell that Michael really does still love Jane, but it's just not the right timing. You can tell he really does like her, he wants to be with her, but she hasn't really made a decision. She doesn't really know what she wants to do, and until that she does so, he doesn't want to really make any further moves, which I think was a good move on his part, because he didn't want to seem overbearing. He didn't want to seem like he was too into her and that he wasn't over her. He wanted to seem like he knew what he was doing, and I think, Michael really did come off as very mature in that situation. He did it to help her family. He wanted to help her family, of course, not just because Rogelio's his best friend, there's that, but also the fact that he knew meant something to her family, and he wants to be friends with Jane, and I really love the way that was done. But from here, Jane is really trying to figure out what her and Michael really are, because Michael does get this girlfriend, Natalie, who, that does not last for long. I don't really remember her character at all. I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't really remember her character very much. We do get some really good stuff in these episodes with Jane and Mateo, but actually one of the biggest focuses of the second half of the season, the first half of course, is Jane's writing, because she's really trying to figure out what to write in this book and what she really wants to do in it, and she gets close with Professor Chavez, this guy that she starts talking to, because she knows she needs to move on. She doesn't know how she's going to move on, but she wants to move on. Jane and Rafeal pretty much call it quits. They decide that it's really not going to work out there. Jane then decides she gets this crush on Professor Chavez, and he's popping up in her dreams. She's having like sexual dreams about him. She does not know where this is coming from, but these two actually do get very close. The only problem is that, basically she gets really close to Professor Chavez. It seems like there's actually going to be something going on there, and I will admit those two did have very good chemistry, and I think Adam Rodriguez did a very good job. I don't know if that's actually Gina Rodriguez's husband. I believe it is in real life, and that's why they work so well together. I know his last name's Rodriguez, and I know her last name's Rodriguez, so I don't know if that's just a coincidence or if they are related. I'm not really sure. I don't know a ton about Gina Rodriguez. I believe she is married, but I'm not sure. I really did like the way this turned out, though, because Jane decides that she wants to finally lose her virginity. She doesn't know how, but she wants to lose it, and you can tell that she really is not handling it in the best way, because she wants to have sex, and I love the way this episode was done, because it really focuses on this idea of really what does it mean for Jane to lose her virginity. I mean, we know that she has said before she doesn't want to lose it before marriage. She wants to keep her flowers. She wants to keep that promise. But I love that both Zoe and Alba both supported the idea. Even Alba said that she's waited long enough and that she'd be perfectly fine if she had sex with Professor Chavez. So it seems like everything's going to go right. It seems like the moment's good. It seems like the two of them are going to have sex. But then at the last moment, Jane backs out, realizes that she does not want to have sex this way. It is not all the way she wants it. She wants to be a lot more special, and more power to Jane for that, honestly, because a lot of people do have sex nowadays and it's not a huge deal, but Jane wants to make it special. She doesn't just want it to be a one and done kind of thing. She wants it to be something genuine. She wants to be with someone she truly cares about. And while I do think she cares about Professor Chavez, I don't think she doesn't care about him. I think it's more of her wanting to do it with someone she loves, and that is when the moment finally is right, because Michael and her, basically they have this perfect moment where these two, basically they meet up, they finally kiss, and it seems like Jane and Michael are back together, which I thought was really good, because you can really tell that Jane and Rafeal, as good as those two are, they just can't really be together. They're more friends than anything. I've always kind of seen them as friends. I mean, maybe in season 1, yeah, I saw them as more than that, but I think this season, they've really shown that Jane and Rafeal are better off as friends, even though you can tell this entire season that Rafeal still has those feelings for Jane, and he's never left those feelings. You definitely see that here. But Michael and Jane, pretty much they decide that they are going to get back together, but they don't do it without Rafeal's consent, because Jane thinks it's the best thing to do to get, obviously, this is the father of her child. The fact that Michael is spending more time with Mateo. There's actually a great scene where Mateo calls Michael daddy, which obviously is a problem because that's not his father, that, Rafeal's his father. And I did like that Jane and Rafeal stayed friends. That's something I really did like here, is that they didn't make Rafeal jealous or anything like that. They could have easily gone in that love triangle direction, especially because this is a telenovela and it's based off that, but it also remains very grounded. That's one of the things I love about Jane the Virgin. As crazy as it gets, it remains very grounded in terms of character, and Rafeal never went completely off the rails about this. He actually stayed very low-key. You could tell, like I said, he still has those feelings for Jane, and he still does. Sorry guys, there's a loud truck outside and it's really distracting me. I don't know what that is. I'm gonna close my window for a second, hang on. Alright guys, sorry about that. There was a loud truck or something, I don't really know. Maybe someone was mowing their lawn, I don't know, which is really distracting. But back to what I was saying, something I really love is that Rafeal and Jane don't lose that dynamic. They are still friends, and I like seeing that. And I like that they tried to stay friends here. I thought that was very well done. But we do see, though, that Rafeal is ignoring Petra, which we'll get to Petra later. There's a lot going on with Petra, definitely, that we have to get into, and I know you guys want me to get to. Rafeal sort of does have another thing going on with his brother Derek. I don't really want to talk about it because I never fully really understood that arc, so I'm not going to lie when I say I don't really understand that. But like I said, I did like that these two remain friends, although they did some really good stuff there, and I really enjoyed seeing that. And then, basically, Jane and Michael, they're back together, and Jane wishes that she had never really left Michael in the first place. She feels the best thing to do was to stay with Michael, because Michael truly does love her. Michael is a great guy, and he's someone that is not controlling. He's not as Rafeal's not selfish. He just doesn't really think things through. He's obviously very rich, and a lot of stuff, a lot of the stuff like him at the hotel, it's just not something that's really going to work out, and it's not really what Jane wants. She wants more something with Michael, where he is committed, and someone where he is on the same level as her, and they don't have a lot of arguments. I mean, these two do have arguments, and there are some things they're not going to agree upon, but all relationships have problems. There's not a single, if your relationship does not have problems, you are not in a good relationship. You need to have those problems, you need to go through those problems together, and then you can, you're in a good relationship. That's really how I see it, at least. And of course, I've never been in a relationship, but I know that every relationship has problems, and I think they very much showed that here, and I really did enjoy that. And I thought that was very well done, so I really enjoyed the way that was all done. And basically, when the time comes, we see these two get closer, and Michael finally decides to propose to Jane because he feels it's the right time. These two now seem like they're going to get married, and for the rest of the season, they are focused on their marriage, which I like that they finally decided that they are going to get married, and that Jane decided that she did want to marry Michael. Now, I was really worried that this wasn't going to happen, that Rafeal was going to try to ruin it, which he doesn't try to ruin it. We'll get into that in the finale, but I really like the way that was done. Most of the rest of the season is them planning their wedding and everything. I thought that was really well done. I really like what they did with that. I thought they did some really good stuff with Jane and Michael's wedding and everything, the way it was all planned out. Like the bachelorette party episode, I thought was definitely one of the highlights. Was her bachelorette party. There's a lot of stuff that happens at that bachelorette party that we will get into, which is really crazy. Definitely between Jane and Zoe. Definitely, I want to talk about that. But that's pretty much everything that happens with Jane in terms of her. Like I said, a lot of other stuff is with her and Mateo. Of course, there is also her trying to write this book from this very, not demanding, but just very strict and no nonsense advisor that she has that really doesn't, really is very career oriented. You can tell she really doesn't have much of her life herself. Jane really particularly doesn't like her very much, but she is her advisor, and she needs to basically go with what her advisor tells her to do. And Jane eventually does write a book, and we hear about throughout the series, which I did like seeing, but that did remain to the side. I thought they did a good job with that, but like I said, it very much did remain focused on all the characters' lives, and that's something I really did love about the season. In fact, if I had to say, I would say the second half of the season, I think I enjoyed a lot more than the first half of the season. First half wasn't bad, I would just say I think the second half was a lot better, and I really did enjoy that. So that's pretty much everything going on with Jane and Michael. Now, the other big part of the season is Jane and Petra. This is a very complicated relationship, but let's get to Petra overall, because huge stuff, of course, happened with Petra at the end of the mid-season finale. Very quickly, it's resolved that we see Petra, of course, she is falsely accused for what Magda did, and she very quickly gets herself out of this, which I love the way that Petra does this, because it really does show that Petra really is not crazy. She's not crazy. She really is very stable, and I like seeing that, and she basically ends up saying that, look, this was my mother. She gets her mother in jail, but Magda does warn her that she is not going to like this, and that she will eventually get her revenge. You don't know in what form. I'll get to that a little bit later, but the rest of the season is Petra dealing with her pregnancy, and I like the way that Rafeal genuinely wanted to support her here. I like the way that those two genuinely had a relationship, and I just like the change in Petra overall. Petra, of course, seemed like she was going to go into the show as the bitch, and yeah, season 1, she definitely was a conniving, scheming bitch. It really, I mean, I wouldn't say bitchy, but she's just very conniving and very controlling last season, and this season she's a lot more grounded. She's a lot more human. She's trying to right the wrongs of what she did, and I like seeing that. Like I said, I like that her and Rafeal had a genuine relationship. I think they handled that really well, but also her relationship with Jane, which is quite complicated because of the fact that Jane doesn't know if it's real. She doesn't know why Petra wants to get so close to her. I mean, it is kind of weird that Petra just randomly, it seems like she wants to be best friends, and it's kind of a lot for Jane to deal with, obviously, but I did like the friendship that these two created. They do actually create genuine friendship. I love the way that was done, especially with their pregnancies, because of the fact that Jane had Mateo, you know, she coaches Petra through her pregnancy, even more than Rafeal is. I mean, Rafeal as well, but he's, like I said, because of his love for Jane, he's very unfocused on Petra. You can tell that this is a very one-sided love, which is sad because you can tell that Petra genuinely does love Rafeal. She's not faking it here. She really does love him, and she really does want to be with him. The problem is Rafeal has these very deep feelings for Jane, and he just doesn't feel the same way about Petra that she does about him, and I really did feel bad for them because of that, but eventually Petra does have her babies, and she has twins, and she names both of them Anna and Elsa, which I think is pretty funny, which I love that she doesn't think it's a Frozen reference, which it totally is. I think that's pretty funny. So she decides to raise, obviously she does raise Anna and Elsa, and she wants to kind of have some get-togethers with her and Mateo, but then a fallout happens when she runs into her identical twin sister, Aneska, who basically arrives at the perfect time. As soon as Aneska arrives, though, you know that there is something off about Aneska. You don't know what it is, but the second she arrived, I'm like, there is something off about her. I didn't know what really it was, what to really say, but there is definitely something off about Aneska. She is acting very shady. She's acting very not acting very, shady, acting very unstable. We don't really know what's going on with her. At first, we think she's epileptic, and then a huge situation occurs on Mother's Day. Basically, when Aneska starts making it seem like Jane is telling lies about Petra and everything, because Petra invites Jane and the family for Mother's Day, but a huge thing with Aneska ends up happening. Basically, someone ends up, I don't remember exactly what it was. Someone ends up, what was it? I'm trying to remember what exactly Aneska did. I'm sorry, there was so much that happened this season, I can't remember. It was one of my favorite arcs of the season, and I can't remember. Let me look. Oh, basically there's this ad that is in the newspaper because of the fact that she worked at that college and she helped out this one kid, but she didn't want to help him because basically the idea is that she was there to help this kid, but the mom basically forced her to get this kid to cheat, which she didn't want the kid to do, but basically the mom said, no, 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 you got to write it for him, and someone ends up putting an ad in the paper that says that Jane is offering a free service to anyone that wants her to write papers, and obviously this gets her fired at the college, which is very sad to see, but you know what, she's doing so much, it's good to see. I think it's good that she was fired because she was doing so much already, she was very stressed out. We know very well this is Aneska, which Aneska says she didn't do it, we pretty much know she did do it, and Petra does end up taking Aneska's side in this, which I can understand. I mean, Aneska's her sister, she's gonna trust her. Jane is not her sister. That's the thing. She trusts her sister because this is her identical twin sister, and she is going to trust her because of that. But you can tell that Aneska did in fact do it, and that she is straight up lying to Jane, and that kind of ruins their overall friendship, which is sad because I did like what they were doing with Jane and Petra. But after this, like I said, it does kind of ruin a lot of Jane and Petra's friendship because it seemed like they had a good friendship. It's not that they don't have a friendship after this, it's just they're not nearly as close as they were after this episode, which is very sad to see. But I do like that Jane basically does apologize to Petra. She says straight out that, look, I'm sorry that this happened. You know, she realizes that Aneska didn't do it, which I'm pretty sure Aneska did do it based on what happens in the finale, which we'll definitely get into because there's crazy stuff going on in the finale. But that's pretty much everything to say with Petra. We'll get to the finale later. Let's talk about Zoe and Rafeal because they probably have one of the more tragic arcs of this season. Zoe and Rafeal, they're very on and off. They very are. I mean, we know last season, you know, it didn't seem like if they were going to, you know, the first half of the season, they have decided to stay together, and first of all, things go pretty well for them, but then some conversations come up. They get a lot closer. Rogelio basically plans on proposing to Zoe, but because of this ring that his mother had, because there's this whole situation where his mother basically comes back and finds that his father is gay and everything, and that's a crazy situation. I don't really need to talk about that, though. The biggest part is that Zoe thinks that Rafeal is going to propose to him, but he wasn't actually planning on proposing yet. He was planning on doing it, but it wasn't with that ring. And that's not really what breaks these two apart. They have a conversation, and, you know, Rogelio admits, that he does want more kids, and Zoe very well states that she doesn't want more kids, and it's really sad because this is really the thing that ruins their relationship. It's not that they can't be together, it's that this is something that they are very divided on, and it's a very complicated situation because Rogelio never got to be a father, and I do understand why Rogelio wants more kids, because Rogelio never really got to see, you know, his own flesh and blood grow up beside him. You know, he never got to see Jane as a little girl. He's never seen Jane till now, and he wants another kid like that. And I think that's one of the reasons why Rogelio loves Mateo so much, because he gets to see him grow up and everything. But seeing Jane and Mateo, he really wants another kid. Zoe, of course, you know, she doesn't want another kid because of what she went through with Jane and everything. She doesn't want to have to do that again. She's fine with Jane, and she doesn't want any more, you know, any more kids. And it's a very sad situation, but it does end up bringing these two up. Rogelio goes to this girl, Dinah, who he starts working with on his TV show because, of course, he decided to produce his own TV show, which a lot of problems escalate with that, which I really did like seeing. One of the better art, one of the funniest arcs of the season was seeing Rafeal work on that TV show. I really did like. You can see these two do try to be friends, though, while Zoe, basically, she tries to get into Rogelio's show. Unfortunately, she's a terrible actress, and he has to fire her, which is sad to see, but Zoe ends up recording a song, but then she gets approached by Esteban, of course, Rogelio's, you know, arch rival, Esteban, and she basically records a song for him. These two start a relationship, and then I'm not gonna say what happens in the finale, but I did like the way that was done. I like the Rogelio and Zoe both moved on, even though Zoe clearly doesn't want to be with Esteban because she knows that this is Rogelio's arch enemy and she doesn't really care for him. I like what they did with them. I thought it was very realistic, you know, their situation, and I love the way that that was done. Of course, you had to have that little twist in there because this is, of course, a soap opera, kind of, but I do like the way that was done. I think that was really good. And then I guess the only other thing to talk about for the rest of this season, in terms of arcs, is the whole Sin Roaster thing. Like I said, I don't fully understand this arc. I'm going to try to make sense of it. Basically, we find out very early in the season that Mutter is, in fact, Rafeal's mother. His actual mother died, basically being tortured. You know, Luisa's actual mother died being tortured, and I guess in like 2007 or whatever. And Mooner is actually the person that's saying that Rafeal's mother. Rose did not take the chip in the beginning of the season. She did not take that chip. We don't know who took the chip, but she did not take the chip. And we kind of get more about that. We find out some stuff about Derek as well. I don't fully understand it, I have to say. Definitely, again, this is just the one arc that I never understand. There's so much information and so much going on in the Sin Rostro investigation, and there's so much going on in the show in general that I just find so much more interesting and so much more compelling that I always find myself just not losing interest. I do feel this arc has gone on way too long. Like, we really need to solve the Sin Rostro case. It's going on far too long, and it doesn't seem like it's ending, especially in the finale. It still does not seem like it's ending, and it's not necessarily a complaint, but it is the one thing I do think that brought the season down, is that I think we were way too focused on Sin Rostro. The entire season, of course, didn't focus on that, but we focused a lot on Sin Rostro, and I understand you need that part of the show there, but I really do love when the show is grounded. I think the show has some really great quiet moments. I mean, there's some great moments between Jane and Michael. There's some really great moments between Zoe and Jane. Oh, let me talk about that. Zoe ends up having, not an affair, but she does end up, kissing someone else at Jane's party when she was drunk, and this is exactly what she told her not to do, is to not get drunk and make a decision, and this is really when Jane and Zoe have this actual fallout, and luckily, I believe Michael is the one that gets them to resolve their differences, which I did like. Actually, no, Rogelio gets them to resolve it on live TV, which I think is pretty funny, and I like the way that that was done as well. Then we get Raphael's half-brother, Derek. He comes into this. You can see that he's very corrupted. Again, I don't fully understand that arc and really what happened there. I'm trying to make sense of it. I don't really understand, I gotta say. But Michael pretty much is convinced that Derek is in cahoots with Mooter. It would make sense that he's in cahoots, and that really what's going on, and we find out that Derek actually tricked Mooter with $200 million hidden under the Fairwick Hotel, and Derek is working with someone, though. Now, we don't know who Derek's working with. We know that he's working with someone, but we don't know who it is, and then we also find out that Aneska was, in fact, the plan that Magda set up that got, when Magda said you're going to get that revenge, it is, in fact, Magda that set that up, and now that I have all that out of the way, like I said, there's a lot to get into. Let's get into the finale, because holy shit, there is a ton of shit to get into in the finale, and I was genuinely shocked. But I will say, I do think this finale was actually better than last year's finale. I love last year's finale. I think it was a great finale, but this finale was touching. It was emotional. It had some really great deep scenes in here, some really great comedy as well. I love the comedy in this episode. There was some really great stuff there. Probably one of the funniest moments in the entire show is actually in that wedding scene, which I know you guys know what I'm probably going to talk about. But also, this episode had a gazillion twists, and we have to get into that because things in season 3 are definitely going to be crazy. Alright, so obviously the finale mainly focuses on Jane and Michael's wedding, and it is actually going to happen, which I like that it did focus mainly on that, as the fact that this is why actually going to happen, what's going to happen there. I thought that was really well done. I really enjoyed the way that was, and you don't know if this wedding is actually going to happen. You're hoping it happens, but the other big conflict is, does Jane actually want to have sex after her wedding? Because, again, she has made this vow, and it's really big transition for her to have sex, and I love that list that Michael made of, all the stuff that they really need to talk about. Of course, the biggest one is, when do they want to have another kid? Because it is a conversation that's going to come up. I thought it was very realistic in terms of that, because for someone that's already had a kid, of course, in unfortunate circumstances and what's turned out, and everything, what's happened, it's been good for her, obviously, for having this kid. I think for Jane, it's turned a lot better than most people that have kids before marriage. Most times it doesn't work out well for them, but for Jane, it's worked out really well. One, because her and Rafeal aren't together, and two, because she's an adult and she's not a teenager. And that really, I think, is the difference between Jane and Zoe, is that Jane is very responsible. She cares very much about other people. She puts other people above herself all the time, which is something I think she does way too much. And we actually do get an episode about that. I don't remember what episode that was, but there is a scene where we talk about that this season. I don't really remember that. While Zoe, we know, just wasn't responsible. She was a teenager. She didn't make very good decisions, and that's, I think, the main reason why she doesn't want another kid, because she already knows she's not responsible enough for one, and I think that really is a big reason as to why she doesn't want another kid. But the wedding does in fact happen, which I was very happy about. The wedding did happen. I didn't know if it was going to, but it does in fact happen. But then the big question is, does Jane actually want to have sex? I love that scene where the wedding scene was perfection. Everything about it was incredible. to Jane saying her vows, to Michael saying his vows in Spanish. I think that was incredibly touching the way that was done. And the way that Jane reacted when Michael said his vows, I mean, she didn't think he was going to say it in Spanish. That was a very well done way to do that. I definitely enjoyed that. And there were a lot of really great callbacks to the beginning of the show because, of course, this show started with Jane and Michael getting together and then breaking up. And I think really it's made sense for these two to get back together. I think that really the whole show we've been building that. I think the fact that Michael had a girlfriend that we didn't give a shit about, I think that also was sort of should have told us that this was going to happen, especially when Nadine got killed. I mean, we know the relation that Michael and Nadine had, so there's that as well. The fact that, Nadine got killed, and from there, we know they sort of had a relationship, but then that ended. So I think we really shouldn't be surprised that we moved in this direction. And I'm glad that Jane did make that choice. Now, I also love Rafeal in this episode because Rafeal, you can see that he really wants to say to Jane to get out of this marriage. He doesn't want to actually go through with it. He wants her to basically, pick him because that's really what he wants to do. But that's not what he knows that, she wants. He knows that straight up, that's what he wants, but he knows it's not what she wants. And because he's a good friend, he decides not to say anything to her. He takes Mateo, lets her marry Michael, and I think it's probably the most mature decision that Rafeal's ever made. We've explored before that Rafeal is definitely not as mature as Michael, but I think this does show he can be just as mature, and I really love the way that was done. I love that Rafeal told Jane that. I mean, even though I think he always will have those feelings for Jane, it does show that he is maturing and that he is realizing that he needs to be a friend to Jane and when to be a friend and then when not to be a friend. This situation where he needs to be a friend, this is something that Jane's wanted all her life, and I love seeing that. I thought that was amazing stuff. And after the wedding, we have that fantastic, hilarious scene where the entire church is telling him to have sex, which I love. Rogelio's line, I think, was probably the best part of that, where he says, "Go have sex with my best friend." I was just dying. That scene was hilarious. I loved it. And it really just showed how Jane the Virgin finds comedy in very, untimely situations. That's a perfect example of that. We had a very emotional scene, then turned into a comedic scene. I love that. Then, of course, we get to that reception, which I absolutely loved. We saw the reception going on and everything. Of course, we got that great father-daughter dance, and then Bruno Mars cameo. I thought that was really well done, the way they didn't reveal that, the way they didn't make the episode about Bruno Mars. And yeah, it would make sense that Rogelio would know Bruno Mars, because we know that he's famous and that he has a lot of connections to people, just like what happened with Britney Spears. I kind of feel like this is what they should have done with Britney Spears, though. Have him in for a little bit, use him when they need, and then bye-bye, because Britney Spears' episode was still probably my least favorite episode of Jane the Virgin ever. I really was not a fan of that episode at all, and it wasn't a terrible episode by any means, but it just didn't really work in the way I think they wanted it to. I think a lot of it was really dumb, honestly, and it just didn't really work for me. So Jane and Michael get married. It's really nice. They seem like they're gonna have sex and everything, and at the last moment, basically, they're about to have sex. Now, Jane's really concerned because Michael spent all this money on this hotel room, and they clearly don't have enough for it, so she's stressing about that, but also the fact that she's actually gonna lose her virginity. That's also going through her mind, the fact this is actually going to happen. She decides to slip into something more comfortable, but then when Michael goes out the door, you see Susana, and you're thinking, all right, Susana and Michael, they've worked together before, it's been fine, which her and Louisa were in a relationship. Not much to say there. They were in a relationship, and basically, Louisa, we see, it seemed like something was going on there. Susana talks to Michael, says everything that's going on, and then we start to see things that just don't add up with Susana. Susana then shoots Michael in the heart, literally, shoots him in the heart, not the stomach, not the hand, shoots him in the arm, shoots him in the heart, which had me freaking out. I mean, I kind of thought something was going to happen to one of the characters because it seemed like a show that would kill off a character, but there's no way that Michael's dead. Michael is not dead. I do not think he's dead. One, because I can't actually see the show doing that. This is not the kind of show that is it's emotional, but it's not that kind of emotion. We don't need a death on Jane the Virgin. We really don't. We've already had Nadine dead. We don't need Michael dead. I think it'd be really dumb if the show decided to kill him off, and I really think they're not going to, especially based on how long Mateo's kidnapping last. I mean, it literally lasted 2 seconds. It literally lasted like 15 minutes, and then it was done. I'm pretty sure the same thing's down with Michael, where he's going to be probably in intensive care. They're going to get to him, and I'm sure things are going to work out there. But then we get to the big reveal that Susana has been Rose this entire time, which is crazy and bonkers. That is actually does make sense. The fact that Rose, we know, had plastic surgery. We didn't know who she was. She has been Susana this entire time. She has fooled everyone. She finally tells Louisa that she's Rose, which I don't know if Michael almost suspected in that last moment, but we know he was clearly thinking about things about Susana, so that's very interesting. Then, of course, we get even more twists. We see that Aneska has basically, we see that Aneska seems like she's in a panic attack and she's collapsed and unable to speak. But then we find out that's actually Petra, and that Aneska actually is now pretending to be Petra. She is making sure that Petra is petrified, and it's really creepy to see. I mean, Petra can never be happy, which is really sad. But then the worst part of it is that, of course, Aneska ends up having sex with Rogelio. He thinks it's Petra. It's not Petra. It's actually Aneska. So that's not going to end well. Zoe's pregnant, apparently, we find out. We know that her and Esteban had some sort of, had sex, and she finds out very quickly that she's actually pregnant, and she's freaking out. What I love of this, though, is that I don't think it's going to be about Zoe, and being pregnant. I think it's going to be about whether or not she wants to keep this baby, because we've known she said to Rogelio she doesn't want any more kids. And I'm sure she doesn't want a kid with Esteban. I mean, that would be terrible if she does want a kid, and I think she definitely is not going to keep this baby. I definitely don't think that's going to happen. So I'm going to say it right now. Definitely, I don't think they're going to keep this baby. We do see, especially because Zoe and Rogelio actually do agree to basically get back together. It seems like they are actually going to get back together here. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen as well. We'll have to see what happens with that. That's going to be very interesting. But holy shit, I mean, there's so many things to talk about. But yeah, bizarro, crazy twists. But that's really what the show does best. It does crazy twists. It does things that really play with your mind, and I like the way this was done. Let's talk about this season overall, because as crazy as those twists were, I thought this was a really good season. Do I think it was as good as season 1? I mean, here's the thing. Season 1 was such a surprise. You guys have to remember, I went into season 1 thinking it was not going to be great. I really did not think it was going to be that great of a show. I absolutely loved season 1. Season 2, I think, was on the same level, but not as good as season 1. There were a lot of things I thought were way too stretched out, or even way too short. There were some things and there were some things that were really annoying, like the whole will they, won't they, when Jane and Rafeal were together and then they just ended. I thought that really annoyed me. It seems like some arcs they tried to go in directions with and then just didn't work, so they ended it. I really don't like it when shows do that. I really feel you should stick with something, and it felt like this show did that at times. Not all the time, but it feels like they'd have a tendency to do that. I think the humor was definitely on point, though. The stories were definitely a lot more character-based, and you can definitely tell they try to give something more for all the characters to do. This wasn't just Jane's story, it was Michael's story, it was Rafeal's story, especially in the second half of the season. Really, everyone had something to do. Even Alba had a storyline, which I thought was pretty good, and I liked the way that was done with that whole curse thing. I thought that was pretty funny. But obviously, there's a lot to do with in season 3. Like I said, I'm going to say right now, I don't think Michael is dead. I think Michael definitely, he is going to survive. I don't see them killing off Michael. Now, how Jane deals with this, I don't know what's going to happen. If Michael's going to be paralyzed, I hope they don't do that. That'd be terrible if they do that. But I think the main reason the creators said they wanted to do this is because they don't want Jane and Michael to have sex in the finale, which I totally understand. The name of the show is Jane the Virgin. You're not just going to change that in a season. It should be spontaneous. It should be random, and it should be a time we don't expect it to happen. There were all those promos this season of, oh, Jane's going to finally lose her virginity, but I like that they never actually went through with it, because, yeah, it should be more spontaneous, and it should be quicker, and I like the way that was done. Aneska, what's going to happen with that? Is Petra finally going to prove that, Aneska is actually not, Petra, that's actually Aneska? How is that going to work out? Is Zoe going to have this baby? We'll have to see what happens with that. But overall, guys, my thoughts on this season. I know I talked a lot about this season. There's a lot to say, definitely. And yes, like I said, I used a fan-made intro. Get over it, guys. But let me know what you guys saw the season overall. How's it compared to season 1? I think the season was right on the same level. I don't think it was, like I said, I don't think it was as amazing as season 1 was, but I do think the season was just as interesting. The Sin Roaster stuff kind of killed it for me, because that's like the one thing I'm just not as interested in. I kind of just want to end, just because it seems like that's the storyline that's not ending, and I feel like for after 2 seasons, it's kind of getting annoying. But let me know what you guys saw this season. Love to hear your thoughts on it. I really love the season overall. I still love the show. Still one of the best shows on the CW, and one of the most unique shows on TV. I love the narrator as well. That guy is just awesome. And honestly, if I had to pick a role on Jane the Virgin, I would pick that narrator. That narrator is awesome. Because he basically is that friend that's sitting right next to you that talks all the time, which honestly is me. You guys should have seen me during Bates Motel last night. I was talking a lot to myself, but to no one. But anyway, let me know what you guys saw this episode of this season. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Can't wait for season 3. I am so hyped for season 3. I need to know what happened to Michael. Michael is definitely not dead, right? Definitely, he's not dead. I know for a fact he's not dead. At least I want to think he's not dead to preserve my sanity and everything. I don't know how I'm going to wait this long launch, see what happens in season 3. But again, this is how I was with Mateo's capture, and then that lasted 15 minutes. So that's why I feel this is not going to be as big as a deal either. Let's see what happens with that. But I hope you guys saw this season. Love your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next, I know I said that a million times, but we'll see you guys in the next one, which will be for tonight's episode of The Flash, which I am hyped on my mind for as well, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.